Okay, wonderful. So we'll get started today. So welcome to the UBC Engineering transfer presentation. We're so excited to have you here and excited that you're curious about UBC Engineering. My name is Tamara Winiger, and I'm an engineering advisor on the UBC Okanagan campus. My pronouns are she, her, and today I'm going to be presenting to you about the Bachelor of Applied Science degree programs on both of our campuses, Vancouver and Okanagan, and how that admission process works for transfer students. So this presentation here is whether you're currently studying at another post-secondary school and looking to transfer next year, or potentially still in high school and thinking about going through the transfer route directly from there. In today's presentation, we are going to cover admissions, like I mentioned, for transfer students. So this is how to apply, deadlines, requirements, the placement into each program or into your discipline. And then we get to hear from two current UBC transfer students, and you'll have opportunities to ask questions at the end. I'll be moderating that and answering some of those questions and divvying them up between our current students. So just kind of to start with a high-level overview, UBC has two campuses, the Vancouver and the Okanagan campus. And while they offer the same things academically, both degrees are the same, their environments are quite different. So you really want to consider the kind of environment and experience that you're looking for, and always keep in mind that you can select two program options on your application. So one could be Bachelor of Applied Science at the Okanagan campus, and the other could be Bachelor of Applied Science at the Vancouver campus. We'll go through this in a little bit as part of the admissions process. So you don't have to make that decision just yet, but great to kind of think about what that student experience is going to look like for you. Briefly, we're just going to cover the programs that are offered on each campus. This may have been covered in the Y Engineering presentation. If you weren't able to attend that, then I can go through it here today. So the UBC Okanagan campus is what we're talking about today on this slide. We offer 5 engineering specializations, programs, disciplines. We use all the same term for, or all different terms for the same program. So these 5 specializations are civil, electrical, manufacturing, mechanical, and our newest incoming program, which is computer engineering. So just so you're aware, in order to get into these programs, we don't have any caps on our civil, electrical, manufacturing, and mechanical engineering. We are very excited to announce the launch of the computer engineering program, which is going to be starting in September 2024. So engineering students that may have completed their first year, either as a transfer student or on one of our UBC campuses, will be eligible to apply for this new discipline next year. The only caveat that we add here is that there will be a limit on the size of that first cohort for computer engineering only. So as with any new program, we want to ensure the quality learning and quality experience. And so the best way to do this is build it with intention. We will have more information on this Okanagan Computer Engineering program coming in spring 2024. Within these 5 programs, we also offer 5 options. Options are kind of like a subspecialty, and we offer 3 minors. So options and minors are not mandatory. They are application-based and they're competitive. The 5 options that we offer on the Okanagan campus is the aerospace, biomedical, environmental engineering, mechatronics, and resilient infrastructure management. And the 3 minors that we offer is a minor in management, a minor in computer science, and a minor in arts. So like I said, those are not required as part of your degree requirements, but something that you can add if you'd like. Then moving over to the Vancouver campus. So the Vancouver campus has 14 programs to choose from, as well as 5 minors, which include commerce, entrepreneurship, arts, science, and an honor in math. Minors, again, are not a requirement, but they're a great way to have kind of a secondary area of study if you're interested in them. The big thing is the programs at the Vancouver campus are competitive. So this is where it differs a little bit from the Okanagan campus. So this means if you're an incoming transfer student, you'll first get assessed based on your kind of minimum requirements to get into the school, into that campus. And then you'll get assessed again on your GPA to get into these programs. And I'll explain that a little bit later in this presentation. So even though we offer these 2 campuses, we do recommend starting at whichever campus you plan on finishing your degree, especially as a transfer student. So if you are a transfer student, let's say coming from KPU, and you get admitted to the Okanagan campus, but you actually want to make your way to the Vancouver campus, that process can be difficult. So once you end up with a UBC program and a UBC campus, we recommend staying there. So the next part of this presentation is probably the parts that students have the most questions about. So we'll talk a little bit about admissions to get into both campuses and these specific deadlines. So as a transfer student or a high school student, the deadline to apply to be considered based on your interim transcripts is December 1st. So we highly recommend that you plan to apply by December 1st because even if you're not admissible based on those interim results, you'll still be considered with everyone that applied by that final January 15th deadline. So we have these like two deadlines. December 1st is an important one to apply by, but January 15th is that final cutoff. We do recommend applying as early as possible. And when we apply, we make sure we're asking that you have all of your information in academic history, but you do not need to have those final grades available at the time of your application. So to start that application, you would find it at the link you.ubc.ca. And on this website, you'll also find lots of amazing resources like admission requirements, financial planning, and a lot more. Our biggest pieces of advice to you are start early, take your time, let the online application guide you, tell us your full academic history, be accurate. And the two most important ones, probably use an email address you check frequently because that's how we communicate with you, and note your UBC student number because you'll receive one at the end of your application. So once you start there, you'll complete the application on Education Planner BC. For some of you, if you're already in a post-secondary in British Columbia, you'll be familiar with this platform. And for those of you coming through high school, you'll also see this from your application. And here you want to complete your applicant profile. So you'll see that area kind of highlighted in red, in the red circle there. Once you've completed those three common sections, then you'll be able to start applying and select UBC. So this part here is where you'll be able to select two choices on your application. So this means you could be choosing Bachelor of Applied Science and the degree name, which is the degree name for engineering, at both campuses. So in this example, you'll see that the student's first program choice was UBCO Engineering, and the second was UBC Vancouver Engineering. So you'd really want to carefully consider which program you prefer, as your first choice program will always be assessed first, and then your second choice will only be considered if you're not eligible for your first choice program. And then you will continue on to complete the rest of your application after that. Typically, a personal profile won't be required for transfer students. So if you have heard about that process as an incoming high school student, then it's part of that. But as a transfer student, it's typically not required, which makes your application process a little bit quicker. So important, check that email, right? Once you apply, be sure to keep an eye on your email as our UBC admissions crew will tell you what you need to submit and the deadline you need to submit it by. If you apply by that December 1st deadline, you'll need to provide your first official interim results by late January, which is January 31st. And that final official results are due May 15th. If you do need to provide a proof of English language competency, that deadline to submit is February 15th, and I'll show you another slide here at the end that goes through some common deadlines. UBC will ask you for different requirements depending on your academic history. So we'll most certainly require the transcript from that current institution that you're at, and will likely require any post-secondary previous experience you have. So maybe you're studying at Douglas, but you actually started at Capilano. We would need all of those transcripts. Depending on how many courses you've taken and the subjects, we may also request your high school transcript. So this is the part that students really have questions about, and it's how those transfer routes work. What's those GPA requirements? How many credits do you need to get into second year program? So you'll see here on the slide, there are two main transfer routes into UBC Engineering. The first one being the engineering transfer program that you see on that top row. The second one being post-secondary transfer. I call this the general post-secondary transfer, which is that second row there. And these are competitive transfer routes from another program. So to see more about these routes or our partner institutions specifically for each campus, you can just scroll down below the session, and there's a couple more links available on the presentation screen. A couple things I want to note. So if you're part of an engineering transfer program, this is an agreement between approximately 10 schools in BC that if you are a part of this program and you complete all of your courses in 1 year, typically it's about 12 courses, and you achieve a minimum GPA, you can see here they differ by campus on that right column. So minimum GPA of 3.1 at the Vancouver campus or 2.8 for Okanagan campus. Your guaranteed admission into our program. So if you do all of those things, you have that admission going into second year. If for some reason you don't meet that requirement or you don't complete all of those courses in 1 year, that's okay. You can still be considered. You just now are considered as a post-secondary transfer, which is that bottom row. So the post-secondary transfer is essentially any transfer student that's wanting to come into UBC from across the globe. So the admission is competitive, and your application is going to be evaluated on that GPA of your last 30 credits. So the last 30 credits does include all failed or repeated courses. And specifically, your math, chem, physics average will only look at the grade of the latest course if any of are repeated. So students are expected to have that full year of each math, chem, and phys. And that overall GPA of approximately 3.1 to 3.3 computes to 76 to 78% for that competitive second year entrance into Vancouver. So these are the two streams that students can transfer into either campus. Now talking about year level placement, as students come in, they get placed into year 1 or year 2. So if you're entering through that engineering transfer program path, which I talked about in that first row, and you complete that full set of courses, you'll be eligible for year 2. If you're transferring through a different path, maybe that bottom row I mentioned, then the number of equivalent courses to our first year program will determine your level eligibility. We recommend highly on planning on completing at least 27 credits equivalent to our first year program so you can be considered into admission of second year, as our first year entrance is much more competitive than coming into second year. And now these next two slides are really just going to show you our curriculum for first year. So typically, if you're coming from a transfer school, you're getting credits for these courses or for a handful of the courses or for some of them. So here you'll see this is the Vancouver campus, and these are the 12 courses that are required for Vancouver students in their first year. Typically, that's what would be transferring over from another institution. And the next one is the Okanagan. So our course titles vary slightly, but the Okanagan and the Vancouver campus kind of share that first year curriculum. And you'll be able to see a little bit more information about that below. If you scroll down, you can click on and see the courses that first year UBC students are taking. The second part I want to talk about is that placement form. So placement into your disciplines, placement into your programs. So at the Vancouver campus, as I mentioned, placement into that second year program is competitive. So into one of those 14 programs, and it is separate from admissions. So if you're looking at studying on the Vancouver campus, you're first assessed on your general eligibility to be a Bachelor of Applied Science student. And then your second is going to be your eligibility into the program of your choice. So what happens is you're eligible for your admissions based on your year level, and that placement of the program that you'll study in is competitive. Just a reminder, on the Okanagan campus, other than our new incoming program, the placement process into your program is not competitive. So if you choose Okanagan and you're interested in mechanical, you would get into mechanical. It's not the same for the Vancouver campus. If you think you're going to be admitted into year 2 at the Vancouver campus, then you should submit a placement form by May 15th. You do not need to be already admitted in order to submit that form, but once you're admitted, you'll be reminded again to submit the form. So just a little bit about that placement process and how it works at the Vancouver campus. So this form will require you to rank all the 14 programs, and you get to write a personal statement of 500 words for your first choice program that gets put into consideration. We also encourage you to consider that there may be programs that are suited in the field of engineering, multiple programs. So for example, if you're interested in working in the biomedical engineering field, you might want to consider biomedical engineering as your program, or the biomechanics and medical devices option within mechanical, or the biomedical option within electrical. So there are varying ways to get those specialties that you want if you aren't admitted into that program of choice. This slide's super interesting. Lots of students ask us about it. But here we're really just trying to show you the 4-year historical first choice entrance GPA for the Vancouver program. So again, we're talking Vancouver. So this is going to show you a little bit about their competitiveness of what that first year average is. The grades here do not indicate the exact cutoff points, but really just that historical data over the last 4 years. So it's important to note that students completing that engineering transfer program at our partner institutions for Vancouver require a 3.1 GPA to be admitted into second year, but your discipline of choice may require a higher average. So just as we take a look at this graph here, you'll see our three most competitive programs would be CPEN, which is computer engineering, ENPH, which is engineering physics, and mechanical engineering. So this just shows you the averages of students and who got into each program over the last 4 years. Next, this is just that overall dates and deadlines if you want to take a screenshot. This also is available on our website, but those main application deadlines that you're looking for would be that December 1st, January 15th. And then we're looking at those deadlines to submit interim transcripts, which is end of Jan. And May 15th is kind of that deadline to submit those final transcripts. So lots of dates and deadlines to remember, but really the most important one right away is that December 1st and January 15th. Okay, so I have a question that was submitted a couple minutes ago during the presentation. So it says, hi, if I submit my transcript before I submit my application, will my transcript get lost? Should I be sending it again when it is requested? So transcripts shouldn't get lost. I hope that they don't get lost, but typically you shouldn't be sending your transcript before your application because they don't have anything to tie it to. So what I would recommend is that you would be applying first by that December 1st, January 15th deadline, and as soon as your application is in, then that's when you would send those interim transcripts. Great question. The next question I see here, so for a post-secondary transfer student, as a transfer eligibility of courses is not assessed until after admission is offered, correct? How can one ensure that your application is evaluated as a proposed second-year transfer student as opposed to a first-year transfer student? Asking because course grade levels typically vary between high school applicants and university applicants. So that's a really good question. What happens at UBC is if you're a transfer student, you're not part of that engineering transfer program, but you're a general post-secondary transfer student. Usually you want to know how many credits you think you're going to get before applying and understanding how many credits you're going to get into the school. So typically, like we said, it's not assessed until you've been admitted, but you definitely can work with an advisor ahead of time. And we can look to see if you're from a school that has had students transfer in the past, what the likelihood of your transfer credits might be. So let's say you're a student coming from an international school, or even a student coming from a post-secondary institution in Ontario. We can kind of look at that historical data and see what students have transferred in the past and give you a bit of a better idea of what we think you may be receiving credit for once you're admitted. But typically, we do not assess or articulate your full transfer credits until you've been admitted. So it's a bit of you won't get that 100% confirmation, but you will have a better idea after talking with an advisor how many are gonna transfer for you. Great question. Okay, next question here. If you took a non-engineering program at another university a while ago, does that GPA count towards the transfer GPA UBC looks at for engineering? So yes, UBC will look at all of your transfer assessments. However, if you are in an engineering transfer program, they're likely going to look at the engineering transfer program first before looking at your other grades. But it is required that you do disclose any types of grades that you've received in the past. And so just making sure that if you are unsure which program they're looking at the GPA for, you might want to connect with an advisor ahead of time before you're submitting that application. But all of your grades are assessed, and then usually they're just looking at those recent 30 credits that I mentioned, more specifically in those math, chem, phys. Can the elective be in any faculty? Is computer science an acceptable elective? So typically students are required to take a humanities elective, and there are approved list of electives depending on which campus you're on to which ones you can take. So that would be something that you would want to chat with an advisor once you're admitted to see what types of courses that you can take for that humanities elective if you don't have transfer credit for them already. This next question, I'm currently a second year chemical engineering student at a university outside BC? Will I be able to transfer into third year chemical engineering, or will be placed into second year? Would it be possible to take courses from both second and third year? So that's a really good question, because we do have students coming from outside of BC, of course, and sometimes students have completed more than first year. So typically how transfer credits work on both campuses is that we're more assessing based on your first year equivalencies. So if you've taken second year courses, those are all articulated at discretion. So they get articulated at the faculty level, depending on which program you're going into. The likelihood of receiving transfer credits for second year and beyond are quite a bit less. So you may receive one or two, but you wouldn't receive a full year. So coming into third year would be unlikely. You'd be more likely admitted into second year. Really great question. Great question. Okay, I think I saw one of our students pop up. Was that Luke? If you want to turn on your camera.
There we go. It's all working.
Hey, Luke, thanks so much for joining us. Sorry for that technical difficulty. And hi, Neil. I'm so happy to have you join. I'm actually going to pass it over to Luke first. So, Luke, if you don't mind, just telling the students that are here, of course, your name. I know we have information on the slide, the program, which school you're transferring from, and maybe why you chose UBC Engineering.
Yeah. So my name's Luke McDonald. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I'm a third year electrical engineering student at UBC Vancouver. And the reason I chose UBC was because I grew up in North Vancouver, and my grandparents actually live very close to campus. So when I was young, we'd walk around campus, and I always just kind of knew that's where I wanted to end up. And I love UBC. It's awesome for not only the education, but all the extracurriculars. I'm on a design team called Subbots, and I love the intramural sports at UBC. On the slide, there's a photo of my intramural ultimate team just before we won the championship. So that was awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke. Luke, thanks for joining us today. The reason why we have students join us is so that you can really understand that student experience. So it's nice to hear that Luke is involved in other things outside of obviously his academics. And each campus does offer a lot of amenities and a lot of extracurriculars that you can join into. So thanks so much, Luke. I'll now pass it over to Neil, Bhavneil, to introduce himself as well.
Hi, my name is Neil. I'm a third year mechanical engineering student at the Okanagan campus. I transferred from Thompson Rivers University in Kamloops. I chose UBC, like the Okanagan campus in particular, because the location was very good. It was near my hometown, and just all the engineering extracurriculars are, I don't know, it's really interested me compared to other universities. Like we got the motorsports club and the aerospace club. And yeah, that's why I picked UBC.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. Well, welcome. Thanks. We're so excited to have you. I know we have some questions still coming through the Q&A, but one question I really wanted to ask both of our students that are joining us today, I'll hear from both of them, Luke and Neil, is more about that transfer process and how to make friends. So, Neil, if I can just direct this question to you at first. How did you find making friends coming into a new program and a new campus?
At first, it's always a little scary because you're in a new environment with different people, but there's so many opportunities to meet new people. You have your labs, you're going to be intermingling with a bunch of people you've never met, and there's all these different clubs and activities. I did the intramural volleyball team, and that was one way I made a lot of friends, was doing that. Definitely recommend that.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. I think it's so important for our transfer students to join those extracurriculars that we have, whether it's clubs or intramurals, just because you're not getting that same experience that new high school students might be getting coming in as you're coming into second year, and some friendships have already formed. So Luke, I'll pass it back over to you. Luke, I just wanted to know the same question. So how did you find making friends were coming into a new program and a new campus?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Try and join at least one extracurricular activity and make some friends through that. But I'd also suggest when you're in class or in a lab in that first week or two, try and just sit next to someone new every single day. And it might be a little bit scary at first, but you'll realize that most people are friendly, if not everybody's friendly. and you'll get familiar with people really quickly.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke. Okay, so we have a couple more minutes for some last, a couple more questions. So this one, actually, I'm going to pass over to both Neil and Luke because you are a student and you maybe this is going to be a learning moment, or I can let you know how they can access it. But Mary is asking, how does one connect with an advisor? So Neil, do you know how to connect with an advisor on the Okanagan campus?
If you go through the student website, there's also like the Okanagan, they have like the Vancouver and then the Okanagan side. There is a way to find a list of all the advisor emails on there. It's usually something at advisor, and just send them an email or a phone call. Easiest way is probably phone call. Just call and they'll put you through to an advisor.
Awesome. And how about you, Luke? Do you know how to connect with advisor on your campus?
Yeah, basically the same thing. It's just a matter of hopping on Google and searching up the advisor emails. Thankfully, at UBC, there's a whole bunch of different advisors. You have co-op advisors, and then you have academic advisors, and all sorts of people waiting to help you out. It's just one keystroke away online. So you just got to look it up and find the email you're looking for.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, our UBC websites have so much information on them. So really, once you connect with someone, they should be able to direct you to an advisor, whether it's each campus. And if you accidentally do the wrong campus, we're able to redirect you to that campus. So we do have advising offices, engineering specific, for both campuses. And if you scroll down to any of the links that are below this session here, you'll be able to be linked to each academic advising webpage where you can find contact information. Great question. Heidi is wondering, and this is a great question. So Heidi was wondering, can you give me an example of an engineering transfer program? So great question, Heidi. If you are a high school student and you're thinking about coming through a transfer program and you want it to be an engineering transfer program so that you have those ultimate transfer credits, you'll want to take a look, if you scroll down on our page again, at the links below. So we have under the Vancouver one, it says transfer student website, and under Okanagan, it says transfer student website. And from there, you can see it's typically 10 transfer schools. So I have one here open, but for example, we have partnerships with Capilano, Douglas, Kwantlen, Polytechnic, TRU, UFV, VIU. So there are several that you can check out if you're looking to go from high school into those transfer programs. Okay, so I realize we are just a minute over time. I'll maybe take 2 more questions here. And what I can do is, if you have any other questions, more specifically, you can send them to myself, and I'll give you an email address, and then I can kind of redirect you either way. So as I just kind of scroll here through the questions, okay, yeah, so great question. A couple minutes ago, it says, tell me if I'm getting this right. If you maintain the 3.1 GPA requirement at one of UBC's partner universities, so this would be for Vancouver campus, the admission to UBC Engineering is guaranteed, but the selection process of which type of engineering you want is competitive. Yes, that is correct. Looks like someone else did reply to that, Luke. Thanks for jumping on that. But yes, if you're going to the Vancouver campus, you may have that guaranteed admission into UBC Engineering or UBC Bachelor of Applied Science, but it's not necessarily into mechanical or that top program of choice. So that part is competitive and you have to reapply through a different process. And all of that information on how to apply for that second year placement, is what we call it, will be communicated to you if you've submitted an application on time. Great question. And then I'll take this one last question here from Pierce 3 minutes ago. So how many credits are transferred to UBC as a transfer program student if we've already taken more than 30 credits? So they're only going to assess the most relevant 30 credits for your degree and for the equivalencies. So if let's say you have taken some poli-sci courses or psychology courses outside of engineering, that's wonderful, but those ones won't really be assessed if you've taken more than that, because they're not equivalent to our program. They may be equivalent to a humanities elective, but we're looking at the courses that are equivalent to those lists that I talked about earlier in the presentation. So I wonder if we just go back here really quickly. We're looking at the courses that are equivalent to these first year required courses. So for the Okanagan campus, we're looking at equivalent courses to these, and the Vancouver campus, we're looking at equivalent courses to those. So that's a really great question. Okay, so I recognize we're over time. I do really appreciate everyone coming in today. Just before we leave, just to hear a little bit more from Luke and Neil. Luke, I'm wondering if you have, one tip for a student that's looking at transferring into UBC Okanagan, whether it's going to be next year or going through a transfer program.
I'd say in general, think really hard about your discipline. Spend this year while you're studying, figuring out what classes you like, what you enjoy and what you necessarily don't enjoy, and really apply that to what you want to do in the future. Because you hear the stories at UBC of people that put their top choice that maybe was just out of the bounds of their GPA to get in, and then they loaded up all the really tough ones to get into below that. So their first choice was, say, Eng Phys, and then they put mechanical engineering and all the other tough ones below because they thought that that would allow them to get into engineering physics because they wouldn't get into the ones below. But what ends up happening is your 500 word little blurb that you write to get into your program of choice is only seen by the top program you apply to your first choice. So if I wrote, when I applied to electrical engineering, I wrote a little blurb, a 500 word thing, but only the electrical engineering admissions people saw that letter. So if I didn't get into electrical, no one below would see that letter and see why I wanted to become an engineer. And it would make my second, third, fourth, fifth choices way less competitive for me. So just think long and hard about what you want to do and really tailor your application to that choice.
Thanks so much, Luke. And Neil, I'll pass it over to you if you have one tip for students that are applying into UBC Engineering.
Definitely a lot of the same as Luke, except you don't have to worry about, there's less options, obviously, at the Okanagan campus. But I definitely recommend looking into the individual options regarding each discipline that they provide, because say you want to do biomedical, but there is no biomedical offered at Okanagan, there is an option for that. Definitely look into those and inquire a lot about these options that they provide here. And they've got aerospace, mechatronics, biomedical. There's quite a few choices.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. And thanks, Luke. And thank you, everyone, for joining. So I know I mentioned I'd give my email. And so thanks for the student that asked that question. So if you'd like to contact me for more information, I'll give you our this is the Okanagan's general email address, but we can always pass you on to the Vancouver campus. So it's SOE for School of Engineering, soe.advising@ubc.ca. So it's soe.advising@ubc.ca. You can find them on our website, and we can direct you to any questions that you might have beyond this presentation. Again, this presentation is recorded and will be able to be accessed later on. So you're welcome to rewatch if you missed some components of it or wanted to take a look at some of the slides that were there. But otherwise, thank you to our panelists, and thank you so much to attending and for all of those asking those questions today. Wishing you the best of luck on your education journey and your application process.